Hello tubers, back again this weekend. Got my dog Lady here keeping me company. Say hello, Lady. Hi. Yeah. Well, we have still got this tractor here we're working on. Last weekend we found this broken pin in the differential that holds the spider gears in place, and it has become apparent here. Let me get my flashlight. That I do not believe we are gonna be able to just slide a pin in and call it good. Let me get my tape measure here. So this pin has a hole here in the end, right there, and it's kept in place in this hole by this bolt right here that holds the side of this diff carrier cover on, and that bolt pokes out into this hole through this hole in this pin, and that holds this pin in place and keeps it from coming out. And what's happened here is we've got a major, I don't know if you'd want to call it major, but we got a hydraulic leak on this tractor, and my brother's been dealing with trying to keep it topped off, and there's been times this tractor's been operated too low on hydraulic fluid. I've been doing some searching, and it looks like most of the leaking is coming off this seal right here. See that wetness right there on this PTO, and it's been dripping down on my shop floor and running down towards the floor drain. So I believe we can replace the seal on this, and that would fix the majority of the leak. There are other tiny leaks on this, but nothing significant. So we got to get the hydraulic leaks fixed. What's been going on is being run too low on hydraulic fluid. That pin, you can see the galding on the pin right here. Get in close, see all that galding? Well, that galding's been going on inside them spider gears as well. If you can see it right there. And so those forces, this one spider gear on one side, it's seizing up on this pin, and you got one spider gear twisting this way, and you got the other spider gear twisting this way, and after enough time it snapped this pin. And even though it doesn't really have a twisted look to it, that's what's happened. This pin's snapped in two, and when it snapped, it twisted in this hole right there, and when it twisted, it sheared off. It just sheared off the end of that bolt. So we've got to take this all apart to put new spider gears in, because they've been galded on the inside. We need to put a new pin in, and if you want to measure this, just this broken bolt alone, I'll tip you guys down here so you can see. From the end of the bolt, which isn't long enough anymore, to the head of the bolt, we are 2.5 inches from here to there. Well, you got the side of this case right here. We don't have 2.5 inches. We have 2 inches of space to try to get that bolt out, much less put a replacement longer bolt in that is needed to hold that pin in place. So that means this has to come up out of there. And in order for that to come up out of there, this has got bearing, I'm going to call them bearing retainers on each side. There's one there, and then it's on this side also. They're bolted through the case, through this case. Well, I have to get to the other side of that wall, if you want to call it that, to put a wrench on the other end of this bolt. Well, that's all hidden behind this. Which is all the big axle housing that this heavy ass wheel is attached to. So yes, I got to remove not only one wheel, I get to remove both wheels. That is the only way this is going to get fixed. So anyways, I'm just going to go into mechanic mode and start taking things apart. So I'm going to set you back on the tripod, and my daughter has been my editor, so she's the one putting the music to it. And Jaden, just put this on fast forward, give them some nice music to listen to, and we will see how long it takes to tear this apart. Hopefully I can get this all done. This is Sunday afternoon, and we'll see what happens. Follow along. We've got to drain all the hydraulic fluid out, and that's expensive stuff, so I'm going to try to save it and reuse it. So the first thing we need to do, I've got the hydraulic fluid draining, and it looks like it just barely fit in my 5-gallon bucket. Didn't think, I almost overflowed that. But it looks like we got that drained pretty much. So the First thing we're going to do is remove these fenders and get them out of our way. Okay, so we're gonna jack up this side of the tractor and we're gonna put my cherry picker underneath it. And we're gonna let the full weight of the tractor sit on the legs of those cherry picker. And we're gonna test it to see, I don't want it to bend my tubing up on my cherry picker. So we're just gonna gently let it down on there and see if it is strong enough to hold this. And we will go from there. I believe it's all bottomed out. Probably should have pulled my cherry picker out first, but well, I got the full weight of the tractor sitting on that. It don't look like it's bowing them any. So I think we're gonna be good to go. My plan is to run a chain through here, around there, and then the cherry picker will hold it up tight. I ain't gonna try to lift it. I just want it to hold it good and tight, so when I slide it all back away from the tractor, it'll just stay in place. You know, it'll just sit there on the cherry picker. Now I only have one cherry picker, and I got to remove both sides, so I will have to bring my other loader tractor. I have a 4020 myself outside. I'll have to bring it in here, and we will unload that cherry picker. We'll lift that tire and axle combination off that cherry picker so we can reuse it on this side. So What are you guys doing? Need to pay attention here. Quit falling down. Well, guys, I don't like what I got going on here. There's a lot of weight here I'm dealing with. I got one bolt here holding this together, and this has tried coming apart, and there's a lot of weight there. I would not be surprised if there's 4 ton right there in that. So I think my solution here to be safe is I'm gonna, if I got enough time today, I am going to run to Harbor Freight and see if I can pick up another cherry picker so I can put one on the other side at the same time, and that way all the weight will be cradled in the legs of the cherry picker, and then I'll have these 2 jacks underneath the main section, and then I think everything will go better. So I am going to pause the video here for now, and we may just have to pick back up on this next weekend. We'll see what happens, though. We will see y'all later.